I never believed in this stuff. Never. All those stories about creatures in the woods, people seeing things that shouldn't exist. I thought it was all nonsense. Campfire tales, internet hoaxes, people wanting attention. Growing up, I'd heard all the usual stories. Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, the Yeti in the Himalayas. Mystery creatures caught on grainy video. Every single time someone claimed to have evidence, it turned out to be fake. A guy in a gorilla costume, Photoshop. Someone trying to make a quick buck or get their 15 minutes of fame. I was the guy who laughed at those stories, the skeptic, the one who'd point out all the logical reasons why these creatures couldn't exist. No fossil record, no bodies, no concrete evidence despite thousands of supposed sightings. If these things were real, we'd have found one by now. We'd have DNA, we'd have bones, something. But we never did, because they weren't real. But I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm just telling you what happened, what I saw, what I lived through. You can decide for yourself whether to believe me or not. All I can tell you is what's true for me. And the truth is, I saw something out there in those woods, something that changed everything I thought I knew about the world. I own a small ranch out in the wilderness, about 40 acres of land bordered by national forest on 3 sides. The nearest neighbor is 6 miles down a dirt road that turns into mud when it rains. The closest town is 20 miles away. Population maybe 300 people if you count all the farms in the surrounding area. No cell service out here. No internet unless you count the satellite connection that works maybe half the time. It's isolated. That's why I bought it. That's what I wanted. I'd spent 15 years working in the city before this. Office job, cubicle, fluorescent lights, meetings, conference calls, the whole corporate nightmare. Made decent money, but hated every minute of it. Always dreamed of getting away, living somewhere quiet, somewhere I could breathe. When I finally saved up enough for a down payment, I started looking at rural properties. The further from civilization, the better. Found this place listed online. The photos looked rough. Old cabin that hadn't been lived in for years. Previous owner had died and the family just wanted to sell it cheap. I drove out to see it on a spring morning. The dirt road up to the property was barely passable. Had to use 4-wheel drive the whole way. But when I finally got there and saw the place, I knew it was perfect. Mountains in the distance, dense forest all around, a little creek running through the property. The cabin needed work, but it had good bones. I made an offer the same day. Spent 3 years fixing up the old cabin that came with the property. Added a new roof. The old one was mostly rotted through, replaced every single window. The originals were single pane and half of them were cracked or missing entirely. Built a decent workshop out back for all my tools and projects. Put in solar panels on the roof and a new well with a good pump. Running water and electricity off grid. Made it comfortable, made it mine. Those first few years were some of the best of my life. I'd wake up with the sun, make coffee on my propane stove, sit on the porch and watch the forest come alive, work on whatever project needed doing around the property, chop firewood, fix the fence, clear brush, real physical work that left me tired in a good way. Not the soul-crushing exhaustion of sitting in meetings all day. Living out here alone suited me just fine. Peace and quiet, no drama, no traffic, no noise, no neighbors complaining about stupid stuff. Just me and the land. I had everything I needed. A roof over my head, food in the pantry, plenty of firewood for winter, a generator for when the solar panels weren't enough. Life was simple, life was good. The wildlife never bothered me much. Saw deer almost every day, does with their fawns in the spring. Big bucks during the fall, they'd come through the clearing in the early morning or evening. Sometimes I'd see a dozen at once grazing near the tree line. Black bears would pass through in summer looking for berries, I'd see their tracks in the mud by the creek. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of one moving through the trees. But they always kept their distance, never approached the cabin. Mountain lions left tracks sometimes, but stayed clear of the cabin. You'd see the paw prints in the soft dirt after rain, 4 toes, no claws showing like a dog print. Sometimes I'd find deer kills in the woods, partially eaten carcasses. That's how I knew the cats were around even when I couldn't see them. Coyotes sang at night, that eerie howling that echoes through the valleys. I got used to it pretty quick. Kinda comforting, actually, meant everything was normal out there. Eagles nested in the tall pines on the north side of the property. I'd see them soaring overhead sometimes, hunting. Their shadows would pass over the cabin. In winter, I'd see elk down by the creek. Massive animals. The bulls had antlers that looked impossibly heavy. Raccoons would get into my trash sometimes if I forgot to secure it. I'd hear them banging around at night. Once I opened the door and scared off a whole family of them. The mother hissed at me before they all scattered into the trees. All of it felt right, normal. This was what living in the wilderness was supposed to be like. You shared the land with animals. You respected them. They respected you. Everything had its place. Everything made sense. It was perfect. For 3 years, it was absolutely perfect. Then the sound started. First time I heard it was late September, early fall. The weather was just starting to turn cold at night. I was on the porch having coffee just after sunset. I'd made it a habit, watching the day end, listening to the forest settle down for the night. The sun had just dropped below the mountains. Sky was turning from orange to purple. Beautiful. The forest had gone quiet the way it does sometimes, that transition period between day and night. The daytime birds had stopped singing. The nighttime animals hadn't started moving yet. No insects buzzing, no breeze in the trees, just silence. Perfect silence. I was enjoying it, the peace. Then this scream cut through the air, distant but loud enough to hear clearly, coming from somewhere up in the mountains north of my property. It sounded almost human, like someone in terrible pain, a person screaming in agony. But wrong somehow, deeper than any human voice, more powerful. The sound carried through the valley, echoed off the rocks, lasted maybe 5 seconds, then cut off abruptly, then silence again. Complete silence. I stood up, walked to the edge of the porch, looked toward where the sound had come from, couldn't see anything. Just dark trees and darkening sky. I waited, listened, nothing else. Just that one scream, then nothing. I figured it was an elk. They make some weird noises during rut season. The bulls call to the cows. Sometimes they make this high-pitched screaming sound, or maybe a mountain lion. Those cats can sound pretty eerie when they're calling for a mate. Almost human sometimes. People have mistaken mountain lion screams for human screams before. It happens. I went inside and didn't think much more about it. Finished my coffee, made some dinner, went to bed. But the sounds kept coming back every few nights, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, always after dark, usually around the same time. That transition period between day and night, always that same screaming quality, that almost human sound that made the hair on my neck stand up. I started keeping my rifle closer at night, loaded it and left it by the door, told myself it was just being cautious, nothing to worry about. But I was starting to worry. After about 2 weeks of this, I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed listening, waiting for the sound. Sometimes it would come, sometimes it wouldn't. The uncertainty was almost worse than the sound itself, not knowing if tonight would be the night, not knowing if it was getting closer or moving away. Just lying there in the dark, listening, wondering. By early October, the situation was getting worse. The sounds were getting closer to the cabin. One night, I heard it maybe 200 yards out in the trees. that same horrible scream, much clearer than before. I could hear the raw power in it, the volume. Whatever was making that noise had lungs like nothing I'd ever heard. I grabbed my spotlight and rifle and went out on the porch, heart pounding, hands shaking slightly, swept the beam across the tree line, back and forth, up and down, nothing, just shadows and pine trunks. But I could feel something out there, watching. I was certain of it. That's when I remembered the old stories. This area has legends going back decades, longer than that actually. The native tribes that used to live in these mountains had stories about creatures in the woods, tall, hairy beings that avoided humans, stayed in the deepest parts of the forest. People disappearing in these woods, that was more recent, last 50 years or so. Hikers who never came back from their trips, campers who vanished without a trace. Search parties would find abandoned campsites, sleeping bags still in the tents, food still out, but no people, never any bodies, just gone. Local folks would talk about it sometimes when I went into town for supplies, the old-timers especially. They'd mention the disappearances, the strange sounds people heard. Most of them wouldn't camp in the national forest that bordered my property, wouldn't even hike back there alone. They'd say things like, "Be careful out there," or "Don't go wandering too far from your cabin." I always thought they were being superstitious, small town thinking, people believing in ghost stories and local legends. Now I wasn't so sure. Now those warnings seemed a lot more serious. I decided I needed to know what was out there. Sitting in my cabin every night wondering and worrying wasn't doing me any good. I needed answers. I needed to see what was making those sounds, whether it was just an elk or a mountain lion or something else, something I couldn't explain. So I went online using my spotty satellite internet connection and ordered a set of trail cameras. The good kind, the expensive ones. Motion activated, night vision, high resolution, weatherproof. They cost me almost $200 each, and I ordered 6 of them, worth every penny if they could tell me what was going on. The cameras arrived about a week later. I drove into town to pick them up at the post office. The woman behind the counter made small talk while she got my package, asked how things were going out at my place. If I was ready for winter, normal stuff. I didn't mention why I was buying trail cameras, didn't mention the sounds. People would think I was crazy or paranoid. Better to keep it to myself until I knew what was going on. I spent a whole day setting them up around the property, put one near the creek where animals came to drink, mounted it on a thick pine about 8 feet up, pointed it down at the water. Another went along the game trail that ran through the north woods. That trail saw a lot of traffic. Deer, elk, maybe whatever was making the sounds would use it too. 2 more at the edges of the clearing around my cabin, one facing east, one facing west. I wanted coverage of the approaches. The last 2 I put deeper in the woods. Places that felt right somehow, places that made me uneasy for reasons I couldn't explain. I mounted them high on trees where they'd be hard to spot. Had to use a ladder for some of them, set them to take photos whenever something moved in front of them. The cameras had tiny SD cards that stored hundreds of images, maybe thousands depending on how many photos they took. The batteries were supposed to last for months. I tested each one before leaving it. Made sure the motion sensor worked. Made sure the night vision was functioning. Everything checked out perfectly. By the time I finished setting up all 6 cameras, it was getting dark. I was tired, hungry, but satisfied. That night, I actually slept better than I had in weeks. Felt like I was doing something about the problem instead of just worrying. The cameras would tell me what was out there. Probably just a bear or an elk like I'd thought. Maybe a moose that had wandered down from up north, something with a perfectly normal explanation. I'd see the photos in a few days and laugh at myself for getting spooked, for spending all that money on cameras to photograph some elk. But at least I'd know. At least I'd have an answer. I waited 3 days before checking the cameras. Wanted to give them time to capture something good. The weather had been cold and clear, perfect conditions. No rain to mess with the cameras. Clear nights for the night vision to work properly. I went out after breakfast on the 3rd day and started collecting the SD cards. Had to bring my ladder again for the ones I'd mounted high up. One by one, I pulled the cards and replaced them with fresh ones, just in case I wanted to leave the cameras up there for another round. Back in the cabin, I made fresh coffee and settled in at my kitchen table with my laptop. Started loading the cards one at a time. I was excited. This was it. I was about to see what was out there, about to solve the mystery. I loaded the first card into my laptop, the camera by the creek. The files started appearing, photo after photo. The camera had captured a lot of normal stuff. Deer drinking at dawn, their reflections in the water. A raccoon washing something in the shallow part. A black bear sniffing around at dusk. The bear photos were actually pretty cool. Got some good shots of it, but nothing unusual, nothing that explained the sounds. The game trail camera showed more of the same. Elk passing through, more deer, a fox hunting mice in the grass, normal wildlife doing normal things. I felt a mix of relief and disappointment. Maybe there was nothing out there after all. Maybe I'd been letting my imagination run away with me. Maybe the sounds really were just elk. Then I loaded the card from the camera on the north tree line, the one I'd placed deeper in the woods, one of the spots that had made me uneasy. The first dozen photos were normal, some squirrels, a few birds, then photo number 13 made me stop breathing. It was a figure, standing upright, captured in the camera's night vision. The image was grainy but clear enough. This thing was huge, had to be 8 or 9 feet tall, maybe more. It was covered in dark fur, brown or reddish brown. Hard to tell exactly in the black and white night vision image, but definitely covered in thick hair. The body looked wrong for a bear, too narrow, too upright. Bears don't stand that straight. This thing stood like a person, like a man, but massive. The shoulders were incredibly broad. The arms hung long and thick. It had a flat chest. The proportions were all wrong for any animal I knew. But the face, God, the face stopped me cold. It wasn't a bear face. It wasn't quite human either, something in between. The brow ridge stuck out prominently above deep-set eyes. The eyes themselves looked intelligent, aware. They seemed to be looking directly at the camera, like it knew the camera was there. The nose was flat, broad nostrils. The lower part of the face was hidden in fur, but I could make out the general shape of a jaw. I sat there staring at the screen for probably 5 minutes straight. My coffee went cold in my hand. This couldn't be real. It had to be someone in a costume. Some idiot trespassing on my land in a gorilla suit. But who? Why? And why did it look so real? I clicked to the next photo. Same creature, different angle. It had moved closer to the camera. I could see more details. The fur wasn't uniform, longer in some places, shorter in others. It looked natural, not like a costume. The muscles underneath showed through. You could see the definition of the shoulders and arms, the power in the frame. Next photo, even closer. Now I could really see the face clearly. The eyes were dark, almost black. They reflected the camera flash in an odd way, not like human eyes, not like animal eyes either, something else. The expression was hard to read. Not threatening exactly, more like curious or aware, like it was studying the camera, trying to figure out what it was. I went through the rest of the photos from that camera, 5 more images of the creature walking past. Then it was gone. The next photos were just trees and darkness, My hands were shaking as I closed the laptop. I walked over to the window and looked out at the forest. Bright morning sunlight. Everything looked normal, safe. But something was out there. Something that shouldn't exist. Something impossible. I opened the laptop again, looked at the photos, zoomed in, studied every detail. The more I looked, the more convinced I became. This was real. This wasn't a person in a suit. This was an actual creature. A Bigfoot. Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. It was real and it was on my property. My first thought was to show these photos to people, post them online, prove to the world that these creatures existed. I'd be famous. Everyone would know my name. My face would be on the news. Scientists would come to study the area. News crews would show up wanting interviews, documentaries, books, the whole thing. I imagined myself on talk shows, explaining how I'd discovered Bigfoot, how I'd been the one to prove they were real. But then reality set in. Photos weren't enough. Not anymore. Not in this age. People fake photos all the time. Every week there's a new Bigfoot photo or video online, and every week someone proves it's fake. Photoshop has gotten so good that you can fake almost anything. I can generate images that look completely real. Special effects are accessible to anyone with a computer. Nobody would believe these were real. They call them fake within 5 minutes of me posting them. Another hoax. Just some guy looking for attention. People would analyze the images, point out shadows that looked wrong, proportions that seemed off. They'd say it was a guy in a suit, or CGI, or whatever. They wouldn't believe it no matter how real it looked. I needed more than photos. I needed the actual creature, dead or alive, physical proof that nobody could deny. A body would be best, something I could show to scientists. Let them examine it, test the DNA, study the bone structure, prove beyond any doubt that this was a real creature, a new species, an undiscovered primate living in North American wilderness. Or a living specimen would work too, maybe even better. Capture it alive, keep it contained somehow. Let researchers study a living, breathing specimen instead of a corpse. Either way, I needed the creature itself. That's what would make me famous. That's what would make me rich. Because let's be honest about what this really meant. Money. This would make me rich. The first person to prove Bigfoot existed? Museums would pay millions for the body. Millions. Natural history museums, private collectors, universities. They'd fight over who got to display it, study it, own it. TV networks would compete for the documentary rights, exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, the story of how I caught it, book deals from major publishers, advance money, royalties, speaking tours where I'd get paid thousands per appearance to tell the story, product endorsements, my face on everything. This was bigger than lottery money. This was set-for-life money, generation wealth. Money where I'd never have to work again, where my kids and their kids would be set. That kind of money. I started planning right there at my kitchen table, opened a notebook and started writing everything down. I needed to catch this thing, or kill it, either way. The photo showed it was comfortable near my property. It had walked right past that camera like it owned the place. It would come back. Creatures are territorial. They have patterns, routines. It would return to this area. All I had to do was be ready when it did. I made a list of everything I'd need. Bear traps, heavy-duty ones, the kind designed to hold 1,000-pound grizzly. Not the cheap ones you can buy at a hardware store. Professional traps, the kind hunters and wildlife managers use. Leg snares that would catch and hold. Steel cables rated for enormous weight. Chains, heavy logging chains that wouldn't break no matter how much the creature pulled. More ammunition for my rifles. I had some already, but I wanted plenty. Boxes and boxes of it, different types, hollow points for maximum damage, full metal jacket for penetration, maybe some tranquilizers if I could figure out how to get them legally. Probably not though, too complicated, too many questions. Chains to secure it if I caught it alive. A cage maybe. Though where would I even get a cage big enough? This was going to be a major operation. Over the next few days, I drove to different towns buying supplies, spread it out. Didn't want anyone getting suspicious about what I was doing. One person buying 6 bear traps and 500 rounds of ammunition might raise eyebrows, ask questions. I didn't need that kind of attention. So I bought traps at one store in one town, drove 50 miles to another town for ammunition, went to a third town for the cables and chains, hit a hardware store 2 counties over for rope and other supplies. Picked up some camping gear and climbing equipment at a sporting goods store somewhere else. Nobody asked questions, just another guy buying stuff. Normal transactions and nothing suspicious. I looked into tranquilizers pretty seriously, but that turned into a dead end fast. You need special licenses for that stuff, a veterinary license at minimum. DEA permits depending on what drugs you're using. The whole thing is heavily regulated. Can't just walk into a store and buy animal tranquilizers. And I'd need to know the correct dosage. How much would it take to knock out a 9-foot-tall creature weighing maybe 600 or 700 pounds? Maybe more. No way to know for sure without actually trying it. Too risky. I might underdose and just make it angry, wound it without stopping it. That would be worse than not shooting at all. An angry, wounded creature would be more dangerous than an uninjured one. Or I might overdose and kill it. Too much sedative and its heart stops, its breathing stops. Then I'd have a corpse instead of a living specimen, though a corpse would still be worth millions, but a living one would be worth more research value, more ongoing revenue from showing it. Better to stick with traps and guns, more straightforward, more predictable. My truck was loaded down with gear when I finally headed home. The bed was completely full, traps stacked on top of each other, boxes of ammunition, coils of cable, chains wrapped and secured, tools, supplies, thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Had to drive slow because the truck was sitting low on its suspension. All that weight. But it would be worth it. One successful capture, and I'd make that money back 1,000 times over. 10,000 times over. This wasn't an expense. This was an investment. The best investment I'd ever make. I spent the next 2 days setting everything up. The bear traps were incredibly heavy. Each one weighed about 50 pounds of solid steel. Spring-loaded jaws with teeth. Powerful springs that would snap shut with enormous force. Designed to break the leg of a grizzly bear and hold it no matter how much it fought. I positioned them in areas where I thought the creature might walk, near the tree line where I'd gotten those photos, along the game trails where it might travel. I covered them with leaves and branches, made them as invisible as possible, tested each one to make sure the trigger plate would spring it properly, then carefully reset them and camouflage them again. The leg snares went up in trees, spring-loaded. They'd catch a leg and yank it upward. I set those up too, more chances to catch it. I also rigged some areas with heavy steel cables attached to trees. If I could get it tangled in those, it might slow it down enough for me to get a shot. I set up shooting positions too, places where I'd have clear lines of sight across the property, put chairs there, stacked ammunition, got my rifles ready. I had 3 good rifles, a hunting rifle for long range, a shotgun for close quarters, and my backup rifle just in case. By the time I finished, it was almost dark. I was exhausted, but satisfied. The property was ready. When that creature came back, I'd be ready for it. I went inside, made some dinner, cleaned my rifles one more time, and waited. That night was the strangest night of my life up to that point. I sat by the window with my hunting rifle across my lap, watching, waiting, expecting to hear those screams at any moment, expecting to see movement in the trees. But the forest was completely silent. And I mean completely. No crickets chirping, no owls hooting, no coyotes howling in the distance. Nothing. Not even the wind in the trees. The air was perfectly still. The silence was so complete it felt unnatural, wrong. I'd lived out here for 3 years and I'd never experienced silence like that. There's always some kind of sound in the forest, always something moving, some creature making noise. But that night it was like everything had fled. Like all the animals knew something was wrong and had cleared out. The silence was more disturbing than the screams had been. At least with the screams, I knew where the threat was. I could point my rifle toward the sound, but this silence could mean anything. It could mean the creature was right outside, moving slowly, quietly, watching my cabin. I stayed up until almost 3 a.m, eyes burning, hands cramping from holding the rifle. Eventually, exhaustion won out. I locked all the doors and windows, checked them twice, then collapsed into bed with the rifle next to me. I woke up late. The sun was already high when I opened my eyes. I got dressed quickly, grabbed my rifle, and went outside to check the traps. The first trap was destroyed, not sprung, destroyed. The steel jaws had been bent apart. The chain snapped like it was made of plastic. The trap itself was thrown about 20 feet away into the bushes. Second trap, same thing, bent, broken, tossed aside. Every single trap I'd set up was destroyed, not just disabled, demolished. These were heavy-duty traps designed to hold a grizzly bear. They'd been ripped apart like they were made of tinfoil. The snares were cut. The cables were torn down. Everything I'd spent 2 days setting up was ruined. And it wasn't random. This was deliberate, systematic. The creature had found every trap, every snare, every cable, and destroyed them all. Then I saw the trail cameras. All of them had been torn down, smashed. The plastic housings were crushed. The cameras inside were destroyed. The SD cards were gone, not just removed, gone like they'd been taken. But the worst part was the trees. Several large trees near where I'd set the traps had strange markings carved into them. Deep gouges in the bark, deliberate patterns like symbols or warnings. The cuts were too high up for me to reach, maybe 7 or 8 feet off the ground. And they'd been made with incredible force. The bark was shredded, the wood underneath was torn. I stood there looking at those marks and felt something cold settle in my stomach. The creature had been here, right here, while I slept. It had dismantled every trap, destroyed every camera, and left these marks to let me know it had done so. It knew exactly what I was trying to do, and it was sending me a message. I should have stopped then, should have packed my truck and left. But I didn't. The thought of all that money kept running through my head. Millions of dollars, fame, recognition. I was so close. The creature was right here on my property. I just needed to be smarter about it. I still had a few traps left in my workshop. The creature had only destroyed the ones I'd already set out. I grabbed them and headed back into the woods. This time I'd be more clever. I'd hide them better. I'd put them in places the creature wouldn't expect. I spent the whole day working, dug some traps into the ground and covered them completely, set others in thick brush where they'd be hard to spot. I was more careful this time, more thorough. These traps were going to work. By the time I finished, it was getting dark. I went back to the cabin, made some food, loaded my rifles again, and waited. That second night was even worse than the first. The silence again, that horrible, complete silence. No sounds at all except my own breathing and heartbeat. I sat by the window with my rifle, watched the darkness. The hours crawled by. I tried to stay awake, really tried, But eventually, I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. I locked everything up again and went to bed. Morning came. I went out to check the traps, all destroyed again, every single one. Even the ones I'd buried, even the ones I'd hidden in the thick brush. The creature had found them all, ripped them apart, thrown them aside like garbage. And there were more marks on the trees, more symbols carved into the bark. But this time they were closer to the cabin, much closer. Some of the marked trees were only 50 feet from my front porch. The gouges were deeper too, more violent, like the creature was getting angrier. I found footprints in the soft dirt near the cabin, huge footprints, easily 18 inches long, maybe more. 5 toes, like a human foot but massive. The prints were deep. Whatever made them had to weigh an incredible amount. The stride length between prints was enormous, 6 feet or more. This thing could cover ground fast. The prints circled the cabin, multiple times, different distances. Some were 50 feet out, some were only 20 feet from the walls. It had been walking around my cabin while I slept, right outside, so close it could have touched the walls if it wanted. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part was still thinking about the money, still calculating. This creature was intelligent. More intelligent than I'd given it credit for. But intelligence could be used against it. I just needed to think, come up with a better plan. I went back inside, sat at the kitchen table, looked out the window at the forest. The creature was out there somewhere, watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. It was early afternoon, middle of the day. Nothing ever happened during the day. The creature only seemed to come out at night. I was safe for now. I could relax, maybe take a nap, catch up on the sleep I'd lost. I was sitting there thinking about all this when I heard it. Footsteps, heavy footsteps, coming through the trees, coming toward the cabin in broad daylight. I grabbed my rifle and ran to the window. There, moving through the trees, a massive brown shape, walking upright, coming straight for my cabin, not trying to hide, not trying to be quiet, just walking like it owned the place. My hands were shaking as I worked the bolt on my rifle, chambered around. The creature was maybe 100 yards out, getting closer. I could see it clearly now through the trees. It was huge, even bigger than the photos suggested. The fur was a reddish-brown color in the daylight. The arms swung as it walked. Each step covered incredible distance. 50 yards, I could hear the footsteps clearly now. Thud, 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 heavy impacts on the ground. The creature wasn't running, just walking, but fast, purposeful, 30 yards. It was in the clearing now, no trees between us. I could see every detail, the face, those eyes, looking right at my cabin, looking right at me through the window. Then it started hitting the cabin, not trying to get in yet, just hitting it, testing it. The whole structure shook with each impact. Pictures fell off the walls inside, dust fell from the ceiling, the walls groaned and creaked. I aimed the rifle at the wall where the impacts were coming from. Tried to calculate where the creature would be, and fired. The shot was deafening inside the cabin. The bullet punched through the wooden wall. I worked the bolt, fired again, then again. I put 6 rounds through that wall as fast as I could work the action. The impact stopped. I heard a sound, a scream. That same horrible scream from the nights before, but much louder, much closer, right outside the cabin. Then the sound of footsteps, running, moving away. I thought I'd scared it off, maybe even hit it. I ran to the window and looked out. The creature was about 50 yards away, running back toward the tree line. But even as I watched, it stopped, turned, looked back at the cabin, then it charged. It came at the cabin like a freight train. I barely had time to reload before it hit. The whole cabin shook, wood splintered. The wall cracked, another impact, then another. The creature was trying to break through the wall. I fired through the wall again, kept firing. The rifle was hot in my hands, shell casings bounced on the floor. I didn't know if I was hitting it, didn't know if the bullets were even slowing it down. I just kept shooting. The wall gave way. Part of it just collapsed inward. Boards splintered. Insulation flew everywhere. And through the gap, I saw it. The creature, right there, massive, covered in blood. My blood was pounding in my ears. This thing was going to kill me. I was backing up, still firing. The rifle clicked empty. I dropped it and grabbed the shotgun I'd left near the kitchen. The creature was pushing through the hole in the wall. Getting inside, I pumped the shotgun and fired. The blast hit its center mass. It roared, that horrible scream again, but it kept coming. I fired again and again. The shotgun blasts were like thunder. The creature was halfway through the wall now. I could see its face clearly. Those eyes, fixed on me, full of rage. This thing was going to tear me apart. Then I remembered the cellar, the trap door in the kitchen floor, metal door, strong, might hold. I turned and ran, dropped the shotgun, grabbed the trap door and yanked it open, started down the ladder. The creature roared behind me. I got down the ladder, slammed the trap door shut. There were metal bolts on the inside. I threw them all, locked it. Then I grabbed everything I could reach, old furniture, boxes, anything heavy. Started piling it on top of the trap door. The creature hit the door. The whole thing rang like a bell. The metal flexed but held. Another impact. Louder. The hinges groaned. I kept piling stuff on top. An old dresser, some concrete blocks, a workbench. The assault continued. The creature was trying to break through. The metal door held, but I could see it denting with each impact. The edges were starting to buckle. If it kept this up, the door would eventually fail. Then the impact stopped. Silence. I stood there in the dark cellar, heart pounding, covered in sweat, listening. Nothing. Just my own ragged breathing. Minutes passed, then an hour, still nothing. The cellar had no windows, no way to tell what was happening up above. The creature might be standing right on top of the trap door, waiting, or it might be gone, no way to know. I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, tried to think. The cellar had some supplies, water bottles, some canned food. I'd stocked it years ago in case of emergencies. Never thought I'd actually need it, but here I was. Hours passed. I had no way to track time. My phone was upstairs in the cabin, so was my watch. I just sat there in the dark, listening, waiting. Every small sound made me tense up. But nothing happened. No more attacks on the door. I must have been down there for 15 hours at least, maybe more. I'd eaten some of the canned food, drank some water, tried to sleep, but couldn't. My mind kept racing, going over everything. The photos, the traps, the attack, the blood. I started thinking about my choices, what I'd done, the greed, the planning, setting those traps. The creature had just been living out there, minding its own business, and I decided to try to capture it, or kill it, for money, for fame. And now I was trapped in my own cellar while that thing destroyed my home above me. More hours passed. I was running low on water. The air in the cellar was getting stale. I couldn't stay down here forever. Eventually, I'd have to come out. I'd have to take that chance. I waited a bit longer, then started moving the furniture off the trap door, slowly, quietly, trying not to make noise. The dresser, the boxes, the workbench, I stacked them to the side. When the trap door was clear, I pressed my ear against the metal. Listened. Nothing. Complete silence. I waited another 5 minutes. Still nothing. My hand went to the bolt, hesitated. This could be a mistake. The creature could be up there, waiting. But I couldn't wait anymore. I slid the bolt back. Slowly, quietly, then the second bolt, then the third. The door was unlocked. I took a deep breath and lifted it just a crack, just enough to peek out. The cabin was destroyed. That was the first thing I saw. The walls were partially collapsed. The roof had holes in it. Daylight streamed through, furniture was smashed, everything was wrecked. But I didn't see the creature. I listened, still nothing. I pushed the door open wider, looked around, empty. The cabin was empty. Slowly, I climbed up the ladder, rifle ready. But there was nothing to shoot at. The creature was gone. I stood there in what was left of my kitchen, glass and wood everywhere. The walls I'd shot through were full of bullet holes. The wall the creature had broken through was just gone, ripped away. The cold morning air was blowing through the cabin. I found some blood on the splintered wood. The creature's blood. I had hit it at least a few times, but not enough, not nearly enough to stop it. The blood trail led out through the broken wall, into the forest, then disappeared. I wanted to get out of there, right then, but I was afraid. The creature might still be close, watching, waiting for me to step outside. I stood by the broken wall, looked out at the tree line, saw nothing. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. I waited, 5 minutes, 10, nothing moved out there. I grabbed the rifle, made sure it was loaded, then I stepped outside. The clearing around my cabin looked like a war zone. Trees were damaged. The ground was torn up. My truck was sitting where I left it, undamaged. Thank God for that. I needed that truck. I moved toward it, eyes scanning the forest, rifle ready. Every shadow looked threatening. Every branch looked like it might be the creature. But nothing moved. I reached the truck, tried the door, locked. The keys were in the cabin somewhere. In all that wreckage, no way I was going back in there to search. I'd learned to hotwire vehicles as a kid. Stupid teenage stuff. Never thought that skill would save my life one day. I got under the dashboard, found the ignition wires, stripped them with my knife, touched them together. The engine turned over, started. The most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I climbed in, put it in gear, and drove fast down that dirt road, away from the cabin, away from the creature, away from everything. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see it chasing me, that massive brown shape running after the truck. But the road stayed empty behind me. I made it to the highway, then to the nearest town. Didn't stop until I was miles away. I got a motel room, cheap place on the edge of town, paid cash, went inside and collapsed on the bed. I was shaking, couldn't stop. Everything that had happened was catching up with me. I'd almost died. That thing had almost killed me. I stayed away for weeks, crashed with a friend in the city, told him I was having some work done on the cabin, needed a place to stay temporarily. He didn't ask questions. I spent my days trying not to think about what happened, spent my nights having nightmares about it. Eventually, I knew I had to go back. I had belongings there, important papers, family photos, things I couldn't just abandon. So I made a plan. Go back during the day, bring my friend with me. Get in and get out fast. Don't stay long. We drove out there on a bright, sunny morning. My friend followed me in his truck. I'd told him there'd been some damage from a bear. Needed help collecting my stuff. He believed me. Why wouldn't he? The cabin looked even worse in full daylight. Weeks of weather had made the damage worse. Rain had gotten in through the holes in the roof. Some of the walls were sagging. The place was basically uninhabitable. My friend whistled when he saw it. We went inside quickly. I grabbed what I could. Documents from a filing cabinet, some clothes, a box of family photos, tools from the workshop. We worked fast, loaded everything into both trucks. I kept watching the tree line the whole time, but nothing moved out there. As we were getting ready to leave, I saw them, fresh tracks, by the tree line. Those same massive footprints, recent too, maybe from yesterday. The creature was still around, still watching the property. I didn't tell my friend, just said we should go. Now. We got in our trucks and left. I watched the cabin get smaller in my mirrors. Knew I'd never come back. I put the property up for sale a few weeks later. Told the realtor there were some wildlife issues. Bears mostly, nothing too serious. The place sold cheap. I took the loss. Didn't care. I just wanted to be done with it. The photos from the trail cameras, the ones showing the creature, they were on SD cards that got destroyed during the attack. The cards that had been in the cameras when the creature smashed them, so there's no proof, no evidence, nothing to show anyone. And honestly, even if I still had those photos, I wouldn't share them. Not after what happened. Not after what that creature did when I tried to trap it. Some things are better left alone. Some mysteries should stay mysteries. That creature is still out there, living in those woods. I know it is. Those footprints proved it. It survived my shots, healed up, went back to its territory, back to doing whatever it does out there in the wilderness. I learned my lesson the hard way. Greed almost got me killed. The dream of easy money, of fame and recognition, it made me stupid, made me take risks I never should have taken, made me go after something I should have left alone. I still have nightmares. Those eyes, that face, the sound of it hitting my cabin walls, the roar when I shot it, the feeling of being trapped in that cellar, wondering if I'd ever get out. All of it haunts me. Sometimes I wonder about the next person who might go looking for it, some hunter or researcher or thrill seeker. They'll read the stories, hear the legends, decide to go find proof. I hope they're smarter than I was. I hope they have enough sense to turn around and leave if they find anything. Because that thing out there, it's intelligent. More intelligent than any animal has a right to be. It knew what I was doing with those traps. It destroyed my cameras specifically to prevent me from getting more evidence. It knew I was trying to catch it. And it responded with force, with intelligence, with purpose. I got lucky. I survived, barely. The next person might not be so lucky. That creature was injured, angry. If someone goes after it again, it might not show the same restraint. It might not let them escape like it let me escape. So that's my story. That's what happened when I found Bigfoot on my property, when I tried to catch it, when I learned the hard way that some things are better left alone. You can believe it or not, I don't care anymore. I know what I saw. I know what happened. And I know I'll never go back to that place. The creature is still out there, still living in those woods, still protecting its territory. And I hope it stays hidden. I hope nobody else finds it. I hope nobody else makes the same mistake I did. Because the price for trying to catch Bigfoot, it's too high, way too high. I lost my home, nearly lost my life. And I'll carry those memories with me forever. Some mysteries should stay mysteries, some legends should stay legends, and some creatures should be left alone. For more interesting stories, check this out.